it's Alex. And if you're interested in learning about photography and learning how you can get into it, there's a huge piece of the puzzle that you have to be familiar with if you're going to get excellent photos and want to share your work, and that is editing your photos. Now you might think, can I just invest in a fancy camera, learn how to use it really well, frame my shots really good, and take the photo, and if I'm not a good photographer, that means I have to edit and spruce it up a bit? Well, not really. I used to think that way, but fortunately enough, editing is a big process of photography, and it actually saves a lot of photos, and it brings out so many details that your camera just didn't see in the first place and didn't capture, and it can make it look more natural and more like how your eye saw it instead of how the camera saw it. So editing is very important. It's it's half of what photography actually is, and it's so important to know. So today in this video, I'm going to dive in to show you some free software that you can use to edit your photos. So by far, probably the best piece of software to use out there is Adobe Lightroom. But if you're like me and can't afford to pay a monthly subscription to use that software every month, we got to look elsewhere for some free options. Fortunately enough, Google actually makes a really good app called Snapseed. It's available on Android phones, iPhones, and actually on Windows computers. And you can go download it and use it to edit your photos, and it's got basically everything you would ever need. Now, if you're using a MacBook, I would recommend using Apple Photos. It's already built into the computer, and it's actually really, really good, and about the same thing as what Snapseed will give you. So I'm going to walk you through how I would edit my photos on Snapseed using the app. But first, we need some good photos that I need to edit. So I'm going to go take some photos today. We just got to one of my favorite places to take photos in the whole city. It's a park kind of in the middle of town that's up high and lets you have a view of the whole mountain range. It's awesome. Got a lot of good photos to edit, and you're going to see why it's awesome in a second. So here we are in the iPad where we want to edit our photos. We'll have to download Snapseed, which I already have on the iPad. And you can download this on your phone, like I say, and also on Windows devices. The one thing to note with Snapseed is that you cannot edit raw images out of your DSLR camera. So I shoot in RAW, so what I had to do for the purposes of this video is import my photos into the iPad, which I already did, had to import them into the photo library. And then I just exported one example as a JPEG photo, and then Snapseed can read the JPEG as it is. So it can't edit RAW, but JPEG photos, it does a pretty good job. So that's just one thing to know, in addition to the fact that you have to have the photos in your photo library on your device in order for Snapseed to be able to edit them. So that being said, let's go ahead and open up Snapseed. And that's the photo I wanted. To do that, you just open from device, and then you see all your photos in your library. We'll do this one, it's a JPEG. See what happens is if I open a RAW photo, this one here is a RAW, it'll crash the app because it just can't process that. So I'll just open up my JPEG photo, which is this one that I wanted. So over here on the right hand side, you have all of these presets, just kind of like Snapseed's filters basically, and it applies all these effects if you want them, but I mean, we're not going to use that because we want to be able to get the full extent out of our editing tools and capabilities here. So I'm going to hit the little toolbar icon, the little pencil icon on the right side, and we're going to start with tuning the image up at the top left. We're going to start tuning, and then what we're going to do is, I usually like to hit auto adjust. It does a pretty good job of adjusting everything, and you can see it pulls all of our parameters in automatically. So if I hit the adjust button, now we can adjust brightness, and it's a little weird, it's confusing how it works, but we're in the brightness slider, and if I just move my finger on the screen left or right, it makes the image brighter or darker. And that just overall brightness, I'll just leave it about there. Then if I move down, scroll down on the screen, it adjusts the contrast. I kind of like a bit contrast in my photos. And it really depends on personal preference. I mean, everybody edits photos in a different way. I like to have some good color and good contrast. Saturation, we'll bump it up. We can, bring it all the way down to black and white. Bump it all the way up to where it looks unnatural. We'll bump it up just a little bit. It was a bit of a cloudy day, but I want to bring out some blue and some color. Ambience, this is just like other kind of lighting. We can blow it out or bring it up. It deals with the shadows and the highlights. I'll just bring it up a little bit to help create that contrast. Again, highlights, I'm going to bring those down a bit so that the sky isn't so blown out. You can kind of see up at the top right, we just lose the sky detail. So I'm going to bring highlights all the way down. Shadows, I'm going to bring up just a tad bit so we can get some detail kind of in the foothills there. And then warmth, we can either make it, more orange or more blue. I'll probably make it just a tad bit blue, just a little bit cooler. And those are the adjustments. So if we hit the little check mark at the bottom right, we'll say done. We'll go back to the pencil icon here, and we'll go to details now, the next item over. And again, we'll hit our little button there at the bottom, structure. This is like how much sharpness is in the image, and you can turn it all the way sharp to where it looks unnatural, or you can make it super soft where you completely lose all your detail. As with most things, you kind of want it a little in the middle. I'll bump it up just a little bit like that. I think that looks kind of neat, the sharpness. And then we'll go down to sharpening, and this is just additional sharpening on top of what you've already put on there, but I'm just going to leave that at 0 because it doesn't seem to be doing anything. So I hit the check mark again, go back. Now this is where the power of Snapseed comes in, and where you can really try to get the full effect of your editing software is in the curves right here. This helps us to control the color. So I'm going to hide, no, I want to show that actually. And I want to show by channel the color that I'm editing. And that's this guy here. So right now, this little square, this grid, kind of helps us to control the color within the photo. So what I like to do is I like to place a point, a marker right there in the middle, and everything at the top right, this section, are all your highlights. Highlights are high, so it's the high part of the graph, if you can think of it that way. And you can kind of see there's like a white outline down at the bottom around here. That is a representation of how much of a highlight of that color is in the image. So right now we're on the RGB channel, so we're editing all colors across the whole thing. We're basically just editing the lights and the darks of the photo. So right now we are editing the light portions of the photo, and the reason we place a dot there in the middle is to help control the bar from moving too much, because if we try to move it like that, it's going to look really weird. We want to keep that middle right in the middle, stay consistent, and usually just bump it up a little bit. We're basically just creating what's called an S curve, because we're going to do this up here to bump up the highlights, and you can kind of see just a little bit, it just gives it a little nicer, whiter feel. And then same thing down here at the bottom left. Now we're dealing with the shadows, and if we bump it down just a little bit, it bumps the shadows just a little bit darker, or you can bring it up lighter, but I don't think that's as good of a look. We kind of want some depth and some contrast to our image. And so now it just creates a very faint S. And I mean, that's really it. You can kind of get crazy with all these different things. I mean, you can see the color gets real wonky in a hurry, but you can add all kinds of extra little points in there to kind of fine tune the color. And so that's really useful for kind of getting your exposure right. We're going to go back to our channels here and select blue. Since there's so much blue in this image, we can really control where the blue is showing up. So again, if we select the point in the middle, you can kind of see the blue graph in here. The blue graph, it shoots way up. That's because we have so much blue in our highlights. As you can see, I mean, most of the image is blue. So what I'm going to do is place this little dot on that blue line that we see going up, and I'm going to bring it down just a tad bit, because I'm not a fan of all that blue in the photo. I'll bring it down just a little bit, like right there. And then we can adjust the green tint in a little bit. We'll also select the shadows and also bring those down ever so slightly. So now it's kind of looking a little weird, I know, but we're getting there. We're not done yet. We're still in process. So if we go back to the channel, we'll select green now. We can do the same thing, put it in the middle. We know there's a lot of green in the shadows at the bottom of the image because there's some trees down there. So if we go here to the shadows portion of the image, we can actually bump that up just a tad bit, just a smidge, to give ourselves a little bit of a green look. I'm trying to decide where I want to put it, probably right there. And then I'll also bump the green down just a tad from the highlights as well. See, if I put it up, the highlights up in the sky turn green. If I turn it down, it turns pink, because the red is the last color we've left in there. So I'll turn it down just a little bit like that. And then I'll go back to my channel, and then I'll go red finally as the final color. And you can see we have all this red in the shadows. I'm actually going to turn that down just a tad bit again. And I'm also going to turn the red down just a little bit in the highlights. I'm going to go back and adjust my blue a little bit more now that we've made some adjustments to the other colors. And I'm just going to, can't decide where I want to put it. I'll put it kind of right there. What I might actually do is adjust our temperature again, but I'll go back to that in a minute. Now I'm going to select luminance, and this is just going to be overall brightness in the photo. So I kind of want to turn it up a bit, just a little bit in the highlights. And that's why we turn the highlights all the way down earlier, is we retain all that info in the sky. In the top right, you can see the clouds and the blue sky, and you don't lose that. You're kind of just turning up the whites here with this. So I'll bump that up just a little bit. And then same thing with the shadows. I'll bump it. I can't decide what looks better. The dark, the light, probably just a little dark, just to make it a little more contrasted. So then we'll click save, and there's some more color coming out of the photo. And like I said, I'm going to go back to tuning the image, and I'm going to come down to the warmth. And this is where I can kind of control overall blue or orange. And I had turned it down to a little bit of blue earlier. You know, if we go way blue, then it's not looking that great. As with all these things, you really don't want to push it to the max. I mean, like you can see, it doesn't look that great. I'm actually going to go a little orange. Kind of like that. Just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my color curves, because there's a little bit of red in those highlights. A little bit of red. I'm going to tone them down just a little bit. Like that. It's kind of hard. It wasn't really sunny when I went out and took the photo. There wasn't a lot of light. It was just kind of like dreary and gray and blah. But you can kind of see we got a little bit of green going on at the bottom of the photo. And I might even just bump that up a little bit more so we can see that there is actual color and it's not just like a black and white photo. I'm going to add another point there to add to the green in the shadows. So that kind of makes it look a little bit nicer. And I'm also going to give us a little bit more red there. And this is kind of what editing photos is. You just kind of, you play with it a bit and you see what looks nice. If it doesn't look nice, you change it. You go back and forth. So now we have some good color. We have some green, a little bit of red down at the bottom with the shadows. And then up at the mountaintop, it turns blue into the sky and the blue mountain. So then what we'll do is we'll keep on going down our list. White balance, I don't really mess around with that a whole lot because typically the white balance is going to be pretty good in your camera. Again, you can adjust the temperature. And I might just push a smidge towards the orange. And then this is where you can tint it towards pink or towards green to help get that balance right. And we'll keep going. We can crop the image if we wanted to. And I might actually do that. So what I'm going to do is select original there on the bottom so that it keeps the same dimensions, so it doesn't get all weird on me. I'll crop it so that the mountain is kind of more in the middle of the photo. And I think that looks pretty good because we kind of have the mountain peak right on that top third line. It's kind of right centered. There, that looks pretty good. Go back over here. We can change all kinds of things. Snapseed has all kinds of fun little buttons in it. So we can do perspective, expand, selective, healing, all these things. HDR landscape, that's a little crazy. I mean, we can turn that up. That doesn't even look like a photo anymore. It looks like a painting. And this is just a filter really that's putting on there, just turning up the sharpness. Again, just extra effects you can put on your photo. Maybe you like that look. I'm not so much of a fan of that, so I'm going to leave it off. And then we can just explore some of these other things down here. Most of these are going to be filters. So, you know, there's like a vintage filter that it makes it look like an old photograph. You know, like I say, most of these are pretty much just filters. We could do a lens blur, which is kind of neat. So we can change it to be more linear or elliptical. If we make it linear, can we change it? There we go. If you use two fingers, you can kind of pinch it to change the size of it. You could do like just have the snowy peaks in focus. Kind of drag it to be right there. We'll go to adjust, and we'll go to blur strength. So that's not blurry at all. It's a little blurry. Like, I don't know, that looks pretty neat. We'll hit OK. Accept that. That looks pretty cool. Then it creates more focus on the mountain peak. And that's really it. I mean, if you tap the photo, it'll bring it up full screen for you to really look at it. Sometimes it's helpful to walk away and come back to it if you're not sure if you like it or not. You know, we can zoom in and see all the details. You can kind of see all the effects that Snapseed's putting on there. It's looking a little fake and a little grainy. You're kind of losing a lot of detail. And that's kind of what you can expect when you're editing a JPEG photo instead of a RAW, especially in an app like this, like Snapseed. But for being a free photo editor, it's pretty darn good. I mean, if we wanted to fix some of that, we could just go back to the tuning, or I'm sorry, we can go back to the details and turn just some of the sharpness down a little bit, and that would hopefully smooth some of that over. But overall, it's not too terrible. That's it. That's how we can edit a photo in Snapseed. So if we go to the little share button here at the bottom right, we can save, and this will overwrite the original photo you had in your library. If you don't want to overwrite it and you don't want to lose that original photo, I'm going to hit don't allow there. You hit save a copy, and then it'll create it in addition to that other photo in your library. So if we go into the library, there's the original photo that we started with, and there's our edited version. Like I say, it's kind of difficult with a JPEG because you don't get as much detail, but I mean, started with that, ended with that. We were able to pull a lot of extra color and detail out of that image that wasn't seen there before. So it's pretty good. Overall, that's Snapseed in a nutshell. So that's it. That's how you use Snapseed, and that's how you can edit all your photos for free. It's a really powerful piece of software, and it's awesome that it's free. So I encourage you to go check it out, go edit some of your own photos in it, go create something awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.